Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of The Opportunity. I'm your host, Gregory Elfrink, head of marketing over at Empire Flippers. And today for our episode, I'm bringing another guest that I met from Barcelona when I was there speaking at Affiliate World, Lauren Tickner, the CEO and founder of Impact School. Lauren is a very cool person. I had an awesome conversation with her in Barcelona about M&A, mergers and acquisitions for her space specifically, health and fitness and business coaching. And I found her in particular quite intriguing because in my space, I'm surrounded by coaches all the time, coaches, gurus, and would-be experts. And most of the time, they leave a lot left for wanting, as a polite way to put it. But Lauren definitely does not. She is the real deal. I had some really cool conversations with her, both in Barcelona and on this podcast. We talk a bit about her story, how she went from a 17-year-old fitness coach to now years and years later, just blowing up, doing big things in Impact School. A little bit about being a digital nomad and just in general how entrepreneurs can systemize their business. And it was interesting. Every little thing she said, I had to stop myself a few times. I had a story that kind of proved her point almost from my experience talking to entrepreneurs. So it's very refreshing, very cool call. If you are looking to become an entrepreneur yourself and systemize your ability to grow that business, not get lost in the chaos and all that, then this is a very good podcast for you. And if you're also looking to take yourself to the next level by investing into other businesses, perhaps Empire Flippers Marketplace, then this is also a good episode for how you can do that while building your core business and not lose yourself to shiny object syndrome. All right, I've spoken enough. Let's get into it with this episode with Lauren Tickner. See you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Opportunity. Today, I have Lauren Tickner with me, the founder, CEO of Impact School. I'm very excited to talk about this. I had a conversation with Lauren in Barcelona, which probably have already heard me say this in the intro, but I'm excited to talk about her business. But first, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on and tell the world where you're at right now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I've heard about you guys for a good amount of time now, and I've always been really interested in the M&A space. So I'm honored to be here, and it was great to meet you in Barcelona. I'm now in Zurich, but I actually live in Dubai, but I'm from England, so pretty multicultural, just like you. And yeah, it's always great to connect with people who also love the nomad lifestyle while doing this crazy thing that we call entrepreneurship. So it's good fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was in Dubai a few months ago. I need to go back. It's a really cool city, but it is cool meeting entrepreneurs who are kind of living this lifestyle. Like when I tell people I'm from Alaska, they're like, oh, I've never met someone from Alaska. Like, well, there's not very many of us. There's a good reason why you probably haven't. But yeah, that's awesome. So tell me a bit about your business. Give me just the quick 30-second overview of Impact School, because I kind of want to go on the story of your journey as well as how you got there.
Yeah, for sure. So Impact School is all about empowering businesses to make a global impact by teaching what they know online. And so we've been doing this now since 4 or 5 years, and I pivoted into this having done it myself in the fitness space and making all the mistakes in the world. People always ask me, what would you do if you could go back to the beginning and start from scratch? And my answer with that, I would just make every mistake that I made in a more shorter and condensed period of time so I could learn the lessons more quickly. And that's really what we're all about. We're in the high ticket consulting space, and we often help a lot of people who are trying to get into that same space themselves, or they have courses or masterminds, or they have some area of expertise that they're good at and they're trying to sell it and scale it, whether in person or online. And so we help them package it up into something that is really a simple ecosystem, which is scalable, and they can then build a business around it rather than it solely relying on their personal brand, so they can really change more lives. That's what we're all about at Impact School.
I love it. I have a friend, he does something kind of similar to that. I don't think he helps them on the, depersonalizing their brand, but I know you and I had a long conversation about that in Barcelona where maybe this is a good question to just ask you based on that conversation. The challenges of building a coaching business, I do feel like it's so tied to your personal brand, but you're saying you've helped people kind of detach those two things, right? What's that process look like?
Yeah, so his pretty big question.
Yeah. 10 words or less.
Yeah, I know. Okay, cool. Here we go. Okay, get my countdown timer on. But the way I think about it is like, if you were to think about any other company, like Elon Musk doesn't begin Tesla by thinking like, hey, this is going to be Elon Musk's car company, right? So he really just figured out ultimately what impact does he want to make in the world. And then his vehicle, pardon the pun, but his vehicle to get that was through Tesla. And so we really think about it in the same way because I think oftentimes coaches, consultants, they get really, really stuck in this idea that everything is in their own head and that thing itself needs to be monetized. But when you realize that the reason why you're in business is actually to achieve the outcome for the people who you're best at achieving that outcome for, then you're able to detach yourself from it and realize that you shouldn't necessarily get attached to your one unique method because you could bring someone into your team who then has a way better way of getting clients there, but you've just been stuck in your ways for so long because it's all that you've known. And so part of it is oftentimes getting entrepreneurs out of this kind of, and I hate to say it, but I've been there myself, so I guess I can. It is kind of this like ego-filled idea that you know all the best ways to do things. And when you really shift away from seeing yourself as the only expert in the world to realizing that your company wants to be the number one company in the world, then you get less attached to, these one specific methods, right? And so really it comes down to first getting clear with the entrepreneur and the business owner. What do they actually want? Because if they want to have a personal brand-led business, that's cool. But are they aware of the pros and cons of each? And then once we get an understanding and they have clarity on that, then oftentimes they do end up realizing for themselves that they want to actually create either a consulting company or an education business or a training company or a coaching company that isn't necessarily fully dependent on them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your comment on ego reminded me of, so I might have actually said it to you. It's something I like to say to entrepreneurs because I could at once usually laugh a little bit. And they, it's also like I kind of stabbed a dagger into them when I tell them the best way to sell your business is by becoming the most useless person in your team. Because that's a system of leverage, right? If your organization doesn't need you to keep growing and your goal is to sell it, like that's a great position. And like the buyer loves that, like I don't need you. In a personality branded business, obviously that's way harder to do. I want to switch gears a little bit before we go too deep into Impact School. I want to talk about your origin story, so to speak. So you started this, correct me if I'm wrong, you started a fitness coaching business when you were 17, right? So was it always the goal for you to become an entrepreneur? I mean, I was doing stuff around that age too. I feel like we're kindred spirits in that regard, but tell me a bit about that.
I had no desire to be an entrepreneur, and only when I first entered the corporate world did I realize that I was totally unemployable. But having said that, I should have realized that a few years earlier when I got fired from being a waitress because apparently I wasn't passionate enough about my job, which honestly, looking back, I take as a compliment. But at the time, it was really embarrassing because I mean, who gets fired from being a waitress, right? I was getting paid like £3.28 or something per hour. But with that said, no, I didn't have any goals of being a business owner because I really had this ambition to be the CEO of an asset management company. I know it's pretty random, and having that as my goal in my teenage years is a bit weird, but it was always something that I wanted to do. And then my aim after having done that for a period of time is that I wanted to get into politics in the UK because I used to be really interested in politics. And having explored that for a little while, what I realized is that, and I still believe this to this day, is that business leaders are the ones who can actually make the biggest impact in the world when they have a mission and a vision that's so big that other people are able to fit their visions inside of that. And I believe the person that I learned that from was the founder of Intel. And I just love this terminology, because I think so often we limit ourselves as to what we can achieve. And so when I realized that today I don't need to be the person I need to be to lead a company of like 1,000 employees or 2,000 or whatever, and it's all about the process and the journey of becoming that person along the way, that was when I started to see maybe I can do this. Maybe it's just about learning from people that are ahead of me. And so then, long story short, after going on to study at the UK's #1 business degree, after quitting my job in corporate, I realized that none of my professors had ever had their own business. And at the time, I was building my fitness coaching company purely because of demand. Like, people were just asking me, hey, do you do training? Like, I was like, hell no. Fitness trainers make like no money. I don't want to do that. I want to do something which has some leverage. And then after a while, so many people were asking me, and I saw a few people doing this online fitness coaching thing back before it was really even an industry. And I thought, okay, well, I'll hire a coach and see what it's like. So I started working with a fitness coach myself. His name was AJ. And then after a while, he said to me, hey, look, Lauren, like, I'm having loads of girls come to me, but I don't want to train women. I just want to train dudes. So would you be interested in coaching the women? And so he took on 10 guys, I took on 10 girls, and then that was how it all began all the way back then. And it was a steep learning curve for me because I'm not a particularly organized person. And so having to manage all of that while I was actually doing my A-levels, so I was still in school, was pretty interesting. However, I was just so passionate about changing people's lives. And that was when I really realized, like, wow, maybe there is more than the traditional path. And honestly, that's what got me into this whole space. And then having been in the fitness industry for a good amount of time, only when the industry kind of shifted and pivoted, and a lot of big fitness influencers who had big brands and were sponsored by big companies, all these companies like basically dropped the influencers and started working with more, I'd suppose, like celebrity influencers as that industry itself started to rise. That was when my friends started coming to me like, hey, Lauren, what's that coaching thing that you've been doing? Because they saw that even though I was also dropped by these companies, I was still traveling into Bali and stuff. And so I just gave them a few pointers like, do this, this, and this. Some of them did it, and they made a couple $100,000 in their first month because they had millions of followers. And that's all net cash in their pocket. Like, these are just individuals launching a fitness challenge. And so that was really crazy. And then I realized, wow, I think there's probably more to this than what I'm doing with fitness coaching just myself. And I honestly enjoyed it a lot more because I just got to work with my friends rather than individuals who I was helping lose weight. And I must say I'm someone whereby I don't particularly enjoy like repeating the same answer again and again. And I was finding like telling people that it's okay to eat carbs was kind of driving me crazy. And so it seemed like a good opportunity for me to exit the market and be able to help the people who help the people. And so that's pretty much how I got into it. And I think it really is a big lesson in just like listening to the market as to what they're saying to you and what they need, and also observing trends from kind of afar while also being in it and taking opportunities as they come. So that was really fun. And that's kind of how we ended up to what we do today with Impact School.
That's awesome. Funny note on the waitress thing. I, too, pretty close to getting fired from one of my hospitality jobs. I was like 16. My first job was working at McDonald's, and I'm a very lazy employee. On the last day where I was quitting, it was my last day, my manager came up to me like, I'm so glad you're quitting. I'm like, why? Like, because you're terrible. We were going to fire you next week. Like, really?
That's awesome.
So I feel you on the passion.
Yeah, well, isn't it funny though? Because I feel like as a business owner or even just like in a leadership position, you always know. Like, I always know when someone's about to leave, right? And so, yeah, like I kind of prefer that when they choose to depart gracefully rather than you having to actually let them go.
For sure. I like the transition from what you're doing into the fitness coaching now into Impact School. I have a very similar feeling on that too. Like when we help entrepreneurs make an exit, like that's super meaningful to me that I can't see it happening in kind of a corporate setting. Like maybe it can, but it would feel different, right? So let's talk a bit more about Impact School itself. You said you're not terribly organized, which is funny because Impact School is all about systemizing, which, we relate to organization. But I did talk with you briefly about your CEO, Nora, right? Nora was her name?
Yeah, I think you met her as well.
Yeah. So she's kind of like your right-hand person that's the organized one that brings the systems to the forefront, eh?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think as a business owner, what I found is that I have to fill my weaknesses. And so I think I became so systems oriented through my lack of organization and just my lack of desire to organize things. Like, I hate looking at my calendar. I hate, having to check off the boxes and go in and click the buttons and like the spreadsheets or whatever. And so having a safety net, that was how I protected myself as the entrepreneur. So yeah, I mean, I think a big lesson for me was finding someone who was my opposite, who could ensure that those things were set up and those things were there so that I could just do all the stuff that I like to do, like, things like coming onto this podcast, things like coaching my sales team, because that's where I'm able to thrive. So only through really, really getting real about my own skill set and getting honest with my weaknesses was I able to, find that right person.
And that leads us into like the first real question I have here, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this, and a lot of them, they might not be coaches, but they are very similar, I would wager, to a lot of your clients in the sense that, and I know you have more than just coaches as clients, but we'll get into that, but a lot of them are solopreneurs, right? And entrepreneurs are quite creative, and usually like you and like me, we're not terribly organized. So systemization is key. So tell me a bit in your words, what are the advantages of that entrepreneur really diving deep into systemization? What are they going to get out of it by pursuing that?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that sometimes some of the clients that we see have hundreds of people in their company, and they use systematization as a way to buffer from actually doing the thing that they really need to do and having those hard conversations. So while I'm all about systems and Impact School is too, I also want to make it very, very clear that like building a system when, let's just say, you're not making enough money to sustain your payroll or to even sustain yourself, it's not necessarily the best area to be focusing on that we have seen historically with clients, right? So it can be a really, really easy thing to think, oh, well, I'm just going to build a whole new sales system just to avoid actually getting into the trenches and going out there and making sales. So I first want to say that. But the second thing is like the reason I love systems so much is because it means that then you have a machine that is working either through technology and software. I'm sure you guys have plenty of SaaS founders listening to this right now. And then as well as that, it can also be delegated to a person who follows a checklist to then achieve a specific outcome. And then you always know that you're going to get the thing that you desire. And then when people have KPIs that they need to strive for, then it's not necessarily about the amount of hours that they work, but it's more so about the number of times that they hit the outcome that you've set on them. And so that's what we really like about it. And I think that as a visionary entrepreneur, in order to have confidence in the fact that it's not just kind of a few things strung together beneath you, right? When you have systems that are being met every day, then you can have the confidence to go out there and do those things that you want to do to actually really grow the company and to get it to that next level. And of course, you guys are all about selling businesses, right? So I personally have never sold a company myself, but I invest in businesses. And I always want to know and make sure that there is a solid infrastructure, so that I can have certainty that this isn't just a few people's ideas just being flung together, written on a nice, beautiful presentation that's being put in front of me. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, like the entrepreneur being like the useless person in the organization. It's tongue in cheek, obviously, but that really comes down to systemization. But I like what you said there about how in the beginning that might not be the right move. And I'm a big fan of doing things that don't scale when you first start off. I feel like you almost have to. And then later on, once you get traction, you add in those systems. But knowing that, what would be a good point in a business's life cycle for an entrepreneur to really start focusing on systems and teams? So like, is there a certain kind of revenue point you recommend or a certain kind of traction that they're at before they start doing that?
Yeah, I think this really depends on the space that you're in. So I'll speak from like the consulting / like B2B SaaS / coaching type of space. And so what we typically find is that we see our clients capping out around that 30 grand a month MRR type of mark, or maybe it's not even R, like it's not recurring revenue because it's just like monthly revenue. And it's often actually like, 1 month it will be like 50K, the next month it will be like 5K. And so if the revenue is really like inconsistent like that, that's also a big red flag, but there's probably not this consistent sales motion. And then without that, there's a huge problem because like, if no one's taking care of that, then obviously it's going to fall back on the entrepreneur. So that's kind of what we found as well. What I have seen is that if yourself are doing something constantly, and you can do this so easily, I mean, it's amazing how many people don't even look at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. But if you find yourself doing these same things every day that are extremely monotonous, such as going into your bank account and checking incomings and outgoings like every single day, then there's going to be a way to automate that. And so, for example, like I will always automate that thing. But then at the same time, once that's automated, still go in once a week and actually check it manually, just in case the automation thing has broken, right? Same thing goes. Like a great example, like this is even just a tiny little thing, but right now we're hiring and we're trying to look for really great people. So I've even posted about this on my own social media. And what ended up happening was that Noor got more than 400 job applications in 3 days. And so there's no way that she can get back to all those people like right now. And this is after they've already passed kind of the first like skills check, which happens automatically when you post a job on like LinkedIn or something, right? And so she has all of these applications. And so she said to me like, Lauren, this is kind of crazy. I just want to, get some guidance here. And I said to her, I was like, send me, because basically what happened was loads of people were following up with her, right? Like, hey, no, I haven't heard back from you. So I was like, okay, send me the copy of your bounce back email. She was like, what? I was like, yeah, like the bounce back email that you have when someone emails you. She was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to turn that on, right? And so, like, because right now they were emailing and they weren't getting a response within like 3 days. And so the problem is that if she'd have just turned that on, then those people would never have been following up because they would have known, hey, expect to hear back in 2 weeks, right? And then we'll let you know, because that's how much volume she had. And so that's just something really simple there that you can do, because it's stressful and frustrating when people keep following up with you when you just don't have the bandwidth to get back to them. So that's one thing. The other thing is, like, I always just think that at the end of the day, like, client fulfillment, and this of course varies from business to business, but making sure the customer is getting the thing that they paid for is something which you don't necessarily need to be incredibly involved with. Because when you have a machine there and then basically sales is basically just chucking more onto that fire that then just burns bigger and bigger and brighter, that's a really nice system to have set up. So at Impact School with our clients, we'll always make sure that they have as much leverage as they can there as possible, so that then as that machine is churning, they can get out in the field and start closing more deals. And so then they master the process of selling, so that then what they can do is they can bring on a team to actually sell more, because it's obviously, client facing with consulting and coaching and stuff. Then as they need to, they can hire more people to support with the clients that they're bringing in and pay them on a per client basis, so that then it's something that's scalable as they begin to grow the business too. And obviously building a commission-only sales team is a really great way as well to do that without necessarily having to have that overhead. And it's amazing because a lot of people are really hungry for these commission-only deals for high-ticket products. So that's just something there too.
Yeah, I think the fulfillment thing is a very nascent point. I feel like when people are building a business, at least the advice I tend to give, and maybe it's similar to yours, is fulfillment first, like hire someone to do the fulfillment for you. Like if you're running an SEO agency, hire someone to do that. Yeah. And then the next step would be the marketer. And then final step, in my view, typically is the salesperson. I guess it depends on the business. You could rearrange that, but the founder, I always feel like is going to be usually the best, cheerleader for it. But is that usually kind of the steps you recommend as well? Like kind of the fulfillment, then followed by the promotion and then the sales?
It does vary from founder to founder, because we have had some people come in who are very, very operational founders. And so what they really need to do is they need to find that kind of more promoter type who does love the sales and who can rally the team. And so then they focus typically on the product and the ops, whereas then they find someone who can focus on the promotion and then also ensuring that there's actually conversion going on in the back end of that promotion. And so the really interesting thing is that even to this day, I still spend 1 to 2 hours focusing on sales. And the reason being is because I know that if I can get there in the trenches, I can always optimize the way that I'm coaching the sales team. And it's something that I enjoy to do. Now, I have been recently studying a little bit more about, different ways. And the reason I'm doing this right now is because I'm trying to optimize the process even more as we're building our sales team bigger and bigger. And what's been really crazy is that I actually spotted some gaps in the process, which is the process that I built before, right? And so it's funny because sometimes when you're so far removed from it and then you delegate everything over to like a sales manager, because you're the one that knows the products intricately because you are the founder as well, you miss out on some certain ways of positioning things that you might be learning through speaking to other founders and friends and such and coaches and mentors. So I still really enjoy to make sure that I am supporting my sales team to the best degree I can, and even doing 1 to 2 hours of sales per day myself. And I wouldn't say that I do the same thing in the other areas other than bringing ideas to my team and then empowering them to go ahead and to execute and implement that, because those people are all just great people in their field. And so I know if I can focus on coaching them rather than doing that job for them, then they're going to be set up to win.
For sure, that makes sense. When it comes to this systemization process for an entrepreneur, what have you found to be, like you mentioned the banking, we mentioned a little bit on fulfillment, but what are some of the other common tasks or areas that entrepreneurs are pretty much like guilty of wasting too much time on that they should definitely be systemizing? Is there some common areas you can think of from there?
So there's one system that we follow for everything that allows you to get an understanding and an idea of which systems you actually need. And so this system is called Vial. So it stands for vital, important, luxury, and eliminate. And so you may have seen the Eisenhower matrix before. And the thing is, I love this matrix, but for entrepreneurs, it just doesn't work because everything is urgent and important.
Everything had to be done yesterday, right?
Right. So in order for it to be successful, what we realize is empowering our clients and our team especially to understand what is really vital right now, what is actually important right now, what's a luxury and what can we eliminate is really the thing that allows everyone to rally together and to get towards the ultimate vision, right? So I'll break everything down, right? So vital is the vitality to the business. So this is things which bring in money and then give the person the thing that they paid for. So if it's an e-com company, right? Like, is the sales process for buying that product working consistently? And then is the person getting the thing that they paid for smoothly? And so you could, of course, say like, okay, yeah, we really want to be making sure that we're doubling our revenue every 3 months or whatever. But that's not a vital thing. The vital thing is actually just the bare bones version of that. So with that said, once you're achieving that through automation, either through tech and software or through delegating it to someone with a checklist, then you can move on to taking something that's important and turning that into vital. So for example, let's just say we wanted to say with Impact School, okay, so we want to make sure that we are closing this many deals through the DMs every single day. That could be then a KPI. And then we want to make sure that we're becoming the best in our industry for delivering a world-class service. And we're going to quantify that by ensuring that we're going to be getting 2 new client testimonials every single day, right? Like that would then be a quantifiable, vital outcome that we want to be achieving. Now, obviously, we wouldn't shoot for 2 if we haven't yet achieved 1, right? Then and only then, once the things that you should be meeting already are being met, that's when you can start adding more things. And so important are the things which are going to move the business forward, but they're not so urgent. If it wasn't being done, the business would die, right? So if we weren't getting 2 client testimonials a day, the business isn't going to die. However, for us right now, because we're meeting the previous criteria that was vital, now we're adding on top of it, okay? And so then luxury is the things that are nice to have, but it's just not totally needed right now. So for example, like we're redoing our website. We don't generate any sales directly from our website. It's kind of an asset that's like nice to have, but it's just not going to do anything really for us. So that's a luxury. And so with luxury stuff, what we do is we just put it on the pipeline for the future. So we say, okay, by this date, all of these vital and important things need to be done. Then we're going to shift this thing here from luxury into important, and then we're going to make sure that that project is being worked on. And then eliminate, we actually found that, like, honestly, more than 80% of the things that we were doing, we could just get rid of. Like, I spent hundreds of thousands of my own money, bootstrapped, to build an entire SaaS over 3 years. And I just decided to scrap that because it's just not something that I want to move ahead with. And like the fact that we did that, we were able to recoup the amount that we had put into that just through selling more of our main thing. And so it would have been nice to have done that. Yeah, it could have been a great thing. But at the end of the day, like we want to stay in our core competency. So we eliminated that. And it's something which has just allowed my entire team to focus so much better on that ultimate vision. And everyone has way more excited about their work now too. And yeah, we're able to focus on just doing the vital things, giving the clients the thing that they paid for. And then we may revisit again in a couple of years, but it's not something that we particularly focused about. So hopefully that explains like how to understand which areas need systems, because then when you know what is actually vital for you right now, then you can ensure that those things are systematized. And so that, again, as I mentioned earlier, either be automated through a SaaS and then have someone managing that to ensure that it's actually working properly. Or it can be automated through delegating it to someone who has a checklist to follow, or just telling them this is the outcome we need. and then ensuring that they then build the right checklist to get it done in the most optimal way they know, because they might know better than you because they're the one in the trenches doing it every day. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that all makes a lot of sense. And eliminating that part, I think, is especially more important than entrepreneurs think about. Like, we tend to be quite creative, which also leads to a lot of distractions, and focus is so key. So I think that is a very good piece of advice. Speaking of advice, I wanted to talk to you about this. I mentioned a little bit offline. I know I mentioned to you in person that usually I'm not a big fan of a lot of the coaches I meet in the wild. There are, all these gurus out there who I feel often are leading entrepreneurs astray, sometimes with bad advice. In your experience, can you think of any bad ideas you've seen kind of roaming around this industry that unsuspecting entrepreneurs fall for, like things they should watch out for?
How many hours do you have?
10 words.
I made a long post about this the other day on Facebook, and the first line, and pardon my French, but it said, I'm going to piss a lot of people off with this post. And then I went into these 3 lines that I've been hearing over the past couple weeks from people who were saying, hey, Lauren, I see a lot of people making a lot of money in business coaching. When's a good time for me to move into it? Hey, Lauren, it's so much easier to sell consulting than it is to sell my fitness training packages, et cetera, et cetera. And what was really interesting is that given that Impact School, we work with a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, a lot of founders who are selling these expert type businesses, is that I see the data points and I know that actually isn't necessarily correct. And so we have to be really careful about who we take on as a client, because there are a lot of people out there who try to become business coaches when they've never had a successful business of their own, which I see as a big, big problem in the industry. And so some of the stuff, when it comes to the advice that I hear, I think hire slow and fire fast is a really bad piece of advice that I used to believe. And what I then realized, having spoken to really successful entrepreneurs, is that it's really about making sure that the hiring process has a great SOP and a system to follow to hire the right people based upon the company values and the vision in which you want to achieve. And so when you know the values, then you have a hiring criteria to follow. And so if you're right now looking to hire someone, most entrepreneurs in a fast-growing business are already hiring before it's too late. I know I've been there myself many, many times. And I think it's really about hiring based upon what you're going to need in 6 months from now, getting that person onboarded properly so that they're even past the 3-month beginning period and they know the company inside out, so that then you have the capacity to do the thing that you know is going to be urgent and vital in 6 months. And then I think when it comes to firing people, imagine if you just suddenly fire someone so fast and then there's a massive gap in your business. Again, I just don't think it's very good advice, because I know that if I was to fire someone who is currently managing all of the consultants at Impact School, then we're going to have a huge gap in the business, because they're the one that knows the progress of every single consultant and how they're doing with all of our clients. And they're the one that's holding these consultants accountable to ensuring that clients at Impact School are getting results. And so that's one thing that Nora and I speak about a lot. So we just make sure that we're following processes and systems for both. And then I would say the other thing is that as the leader, you should get out of the day-to-day. And I think it's really important to work on the growth of the business, but I also think that you have to be willing and able to get back in the trenches and support your team with actually doing the things in the day-to-day that the company should be doing, especially in the earlier days. And so that's how you're able to optimize things, because you know it intricately, from a 360-degree angle and a bird's eye view. So I would say those are a couple things. And then I think another one is okay, this is a big problem in just business in general that I think is people always talking about how much revenue they're making. And then you actually learn that they say oh yeah, I made 100K this month or something. And then actually they made 10K because the rest of it's and they're never going to collect that money. And I think it's just really dishonest marketing. So those are a couple things that come to my mind. Oh, one more is okay, so how many times have you seen people talk about these crazy morning routines? I used to do that myself. And I would wake up, I would then meditate and do self-hypnosis. and then I would go and drink like some lemon water and some like green juice that I really hated.
Some chicken broth.
I would just be in a bad mood because like I hated this green juice. It was so disgusting. And then I would take a really long walk and I wouldn't check my phone. And I would listen to a podcast. And then like 3 hours would go by and I hadn't done anything. Whereas now I just wake up and I stretch for 10 minutes because like I'm actually pretty stiff because I used to be a power lifter. And then I get to work and I work for 3 hours straight without checking my phone. And that's actually really helped me a lot because I get this time to myself that I just don't need to talk to anyone. But that works for me, right? For other people, it might not be the case. They might need to speak to their team straight away to get some updates or something. It just depends on what is best for you, right? And so I think it's just like fitness, right? My background in fitness is like, you can't tell someone that they have to go on the ketogenic diet when, for example, they may have not had their period for years. And the one thing that's causing that is because they've been doing keto and intermittent fasting and they actually need to eat a lot of carbs, right? So it really is like individualistic. And yeah, those are a few things. I mean, I could list out like 100 more. I'll probably leave it there.
I feel like I have a story almost for like every one of those you mentioned because I've been around the space for so long that I've seen all these things happen as well. I think the revenue one in particular is quite funny because like when I first joined Empire Flippers, I was still pretty, I don't know, naive's not the right word, but in the cult of the entrepreneurship in the sense of like just being so impressed. You know, as we start selling these businesses, like I look at their P&Ls, right? We help build them. Like, well, their revenue is big, but their net profit not so big sometimes. So I've come to like firmly believe that unless you're like seeking, for the most part, there's exceptions, but unless you're seeking like VC funding or something like that, I often feel like revenue is a vanity metric, like not too dissimilar from how many views you're getting on a YouTube video in a way, which it does take the air out of some of the entrepreneurs. But speaking of these coaches, I had a very funny story. When I was like, I think it was 19 or 20, I was trying to like coach businesses. And what do I know? 19, 20-year-old, just this big nerd on the internet, like loving SEO and stuff and content marketing. And I sold this insurance broker on this $5,000 like relationship marketing consultation with a 30-minute speech I gave. And it was the most money I'd ever made in my life at that point. And the fastest by far, like, oh my God, I just made $5,000 in 30 minutes. But that 30 minutes turned into like a 4-month slog where I almost had like no money to even get the gas to go to his place. After a few months, he's like, Greg, we got to stop this. Like, why? You don't like it? Like, no, I love it. But the reason why I paid you this much is because I knew you were way undercharging and that this would happen when you basically wouldn't give up. It's just like, so he like used his own consulting skills to hire me because he knew eventually I would be working for pennies per an hour for him.
Oh my gosh. That's
like, oh man, it's 4D chess.
Well, hopefully you learn a lot from that anyway. But it's interesting because here's the thing though, like if businesses don't get honest about what they're actually making in real revenue and profit each month, then they can't get the help that they actually need to grow. So I see this all the time because I see entrepreneurs lying to themselves, like straight up just lying to themselves because maybe one time they had a 500K month. And so now they say that they make 500K per month in their business. Right. And that's a huge problem because if that were the case, then cool, right? Because you're going to have to solve for different problems. But if the revenue is super, super fluctuating and the team members are leaving, there's huge churn, etc., and you're lying to yourself, then you're not going to be able to be honest with someone else because you haven't even admitted that thing to yourself first. And so this is, I think, where it just really comes down to stepping into that leadership and realizing that taking responsibility over the situation that the company is in right now starts with you. And it starts with you being honest with yourself. And I would say this is probably the biggest thing that my sales team, as an example, have to level with people. Because we can tell, it's very obvious when someone's kind of like BSing their numbers. And so they have to level with them and just say, look, if you really want to get help right now, you need to be real with this. And it's probably the same thing with you guys, right? Like, it's like you can't possibly sell a company where the financials are totally false. And so it's just a huge, huge problem. And I think if people were real about that and they committed to 6 to 18 months of really fixing those problems and then trying to make the next strategic moves, then I think they're going to be in a much better position to be able to actually really get to where they want to get to, as long as they're honest right now. Because the first day that you start being honest about that, that's when things start really feeling like they're much more aligned and they start coming towards you. And yeah, it's quite fascinating, but also it's just, you can't lie numbers. Like numbers don't lie, right? And so that's...
We reject around, I think it's like 96, 97% of businesses that get listed with us. But yeah, some of those people, the reason why they get rejected is because we build their P&L, their profit and loss statement, and they realize like the story they were telling us, like they've been telling this lie almost for so long, they believe it. And when they
Yes.
see the P&L, they're like, oh shit, I'm making nearly as much money as I thought I was. Like, yeah, you're not. So they were like, well, I'll come back later.
That's so funny that you see this too, because literally this is the main thing we see. And like it's quite disheartening as well because I think that's the truth. Like they have honestly embodied truth, right? And that it actually feels real.
Right. I want to move towards kind of like the future of Impact School, or at least the future of what you're doing, because we had a pretty intriguing conversation in Barcelona. So you have more than just Impact School that you're building, or maybe it's all underneath Impact School, but it sounded like when we were talking in Barcelona, you're trying to diversify your income streams by basically purchasing other businesses or other income sources. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So my very first job was in asset management. So I got to really see how fund managers operate because I was working on the front lines with them in like front of house like fund management operations. So that was really cool because I got to understand how it works, right? To run like a fund and then see inside like funds of funds, etc. Ever since then, I began to research more and more like private equity, VC, and all of this stuff. And I didn't really have clarity as to like exactly what I wanted to do for a long time. And then when I began to get to know people who are in private equity, what I realized is that like what we do at Impact School is exactly what they do when they're advising the companies that they have invested in. And so right now, given the machine that we have with Impact School, I realize that we have an asset that we can use to really scale businesses. And so we got a couple deals with some of our clients, which we're still in early stages with. Like this has only happened over the last year. But the really nice thing is that because we've got to intimately know their businesses from working with them over a period of a year prior to even entertaining any conversations like that, for us, it's really easy to come in and actually deploy our team and then really uplift the companies. So it's not necessarily something that is for us vital like right now to massively start scaling. However, when I was talking to you, what was interesting was just, getting more of a feel for like what you feel the market is as a whole when it comes to buying like coaching companies, education companies, agencies. So I was speaking with Eric Sue as well, and he told me like some of these agencies are selling 15 times EBITDA. I was like, what? This is crazy. Because for us, we could easily buy a failing agency, fix it a little bit, and then sell it for, if that's the case, like some crazy multiples. So I became really interested in this. And so that's where the direction that I want to go in over the probably around 12 to 18 months from now is where I see us putting our real focus here. Because I think that this is probably a market which people aren't so interested in as I am because I know how to scale these things. Whereas
Right.
like a lot of people's energy and attention is pretty much on SaaS and ecom, which is not necessarily my area unless it's like high ticket B2B SaaS. Yeah, it's fascinating. And so long-term future, like 10-year vision, I really want to be acquiring companies, like majority stakes in companies, which are focused on improving health. So that's the area whereby I see myself getting really, really stuck into. And I feel like right now, the world which I fall in is really allowing us to get a really good understanding of how to do this at scale. And I sit on the board of a couple companies which are in the health tech type of space and like health insurance. And yeah, it's really fun. I'm learning a lot. And this is the direction that I see myself going in. So yeah, it's cool.
I like that how you position Impact School there as kind of like your secret weapon to get into this, because I actually tell agency owners the same thing. A couple of years ago, I was in Australia speaking at a agency conference, which we don't really sell agencies because in general they're really hard to sell. But what you also said, like what you and Eric Sue were talking about, that's also correct. Like these two extreme spectrums that agencies go on, like either they're unsellable or they're like incredible to sell. There's like very little middle ground usually. Like I always tell agency owners, like you have this money making machine, like your agency makes money for your clients. So like just treat your new asset like your client, which is just like a little mindset shift because I have so many friends who they've tried to build assets alongside of their agency and then they just never do it. They never focus on it. And so like just have the agency get billed like any other client and build it into your machine. So I have a few friends who've done that now successfully, but I think that's a great move, to be honest, because like I said, the spectrum with these education companies, they can be either like low multiple because it's very difficult to sell, or insane multiples. So with your track record, I'm sure you'll pick up some really good deals and bring them towards the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you on this to speak about the focus aspect. So if you go and acquire these businesses, how can you make sure you're not succumbing into the shiny object syndrome? Maybe like how you did with the SaaS earlier on in your career, where eventually you have to eliminate. Like, what's your plan to handle that?
Yeah, so great question. So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially the last 3 months. And so in 2021, I spoke at War Room Mastermind with Roland Fraser. And so he's in the acquisition space. And he said something to me, which I will never forget. He said, see, Lauren, right now, your trinket is the trinket, right? Whereas my trinket is the business. And so when he said that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I had this whole mindset shift where I began to zoom out and see things on a totally different level, because I realized that through selling Impact School, I'm selling Impact School's product. Whereas if Impact School was the machine which has multiple different products, and the products are businesses, and those businesses all have their own products, I have so much more leverage. And so right now, we do have the machine working and churning, and we want to get in a position, and this is like our 3-year vision. So by the end of 3 years, we want to be in a spot whereby we can easily come in and acquire businesses. And exactly as you said, it doesn't affect the daily operations. And really, we won't be selling Impact School's products, trinkets, as it were. Instead, we'll be buying the companies, we put them through Impact School, and then that's how the businesses scale. So we don't necessarily want to be selling our own consulting. Our own consulting will be exclusively to the companies that we own. And this is something that I wanted to do for a long, long, long time. But until he said that to me, I didn't understand how it could all work, because it was all really, really disjointed. And what I also realized was that I was thinking, and I was speaking to Nora about this, and I think sometimes you just have to think about things really like if you had a gun to your head, right? And so I said to her, I was like, if I put a gun to your head, like, what do you care more about, this or this? And then she gave me the answer. And I was like, that is crazy, because I've been thinking the same thing. And so here's what it was, right? Because given the nature of the space that I'm in right now with Impact School, like it's all about, education and making that people who are the best at teaching the thing that they do or doing the thing that they do are the ones that get the clients. Because what's going to happen is, and the reason I was building this SaaS is because I was in a lot of talks with a lot of different schools over in the Middle East, and they wanted to basically have online education. And so we were building this SaaS to be able to facilitate for that. Because like at the end of the day, you just need one teacher to be really, really good who can teach the thing to everyone, like some maths teacher, and then everyone learns. And then the time spent by individual teachers is on the one-on-one stuff. And so that's where you said about like scaling the intimacy. See, I'm really big on scaling intimacy too. And so that can be done much better when one person teaches that thing. But then I realized, you know what, like while I'm passionate about education, like I genuinely want to make a meaningful impact in the world of health, right? Because my brother is disabled. He's 2 years younger than me, but he got put on all this medication so that now, despite the fact that he's in his 20s, his mental age is 3 years old, between 2 and 3. And so I realized like what's going to be interesting is now we're getting to know how to scale the type of businesses that we know how to scale really well. But eventually we're going to have such a big, like our vision is so big that we're going to be able to attract talent who can support in these other businesses in this space too. And so I think like I was just able to have a bigger shift in the vision that I want to have through getting around other great entrepreneurs and realizing how big their vision was. Because I thought my vision was big. And then I started meeting people who have these visions so huge, and they're fully aware that they aren't already the person they need to be when they achieve the vision. And they are loving and enjoying the journey of becoming that person. And they're excited to meet the person they'll be when they achieve that. And so that's kind of just a big shift, that I've had in the last year or so, especially when I had that conversation about like, switching the trinket into the business. And that's pretty much like the direction that I want to be going in. So to avoid the overwhelm, I really think it just comes down to ensuring that like you're very, very selective about the businesses that you're buying and investing in, which is why so far we've only done it with a couple, which are in health and fitness, because that's the world that I know really, really well from the past. And also making sure that they fall in line with your vision. Because one time as well, I got involved with some crypto companies which were in like influencer marketing and everything, and they paid huge 6-figure fees to have the marketing work done for them. But it was the biggest pain in my ass ever. And it distracted my team so much. And I heard this saying, it was like, don't sacrifice your ultimate vision for a shiny pot of gold, as you said. And like, I'd always known that before, But it kind of only hit me then when I began to get really clear on what that ultimate vision of mine actually is. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It definitely does. It's interesting as we go through this kind of journey of different levels of the landscape we start to see. Like I remember when I first started like learning Google, like learning SEO, all my friends are like, you can't make money on the internet. Like, what do you mean? Like Google is a company. It is on the internet. Like someone's making money on the internet, right? And then I see the digital nomads and they're doing the lifestyle businesses. And I remember specifically, I was at Affiliate World. This is actually 4 or 5 years ago, I think, in Bangkok. There was this guy on stage. He was talking about why did he build this giant business. And he said, I've been living on the beaches of Thailand for a few years, and I got tired of living this lifestyle business of making only this amount of much money. I forgot exactly what he said, but the way he said it was like so casual, and he used that as a way to like go build this much bigger business. But the lifestyle business in particular is what stuck with me because I did the math and like, wait a second. This guy's making like $1.5 million, something like that, take home per year, like his actual income, because he like talked about is you differentiated the revenue and the actual profit. Like that's his lifestyle business. Holy shit, what kind of lifestyle does this guy have? Like he's living in Thailand. What's he spending his money on? But he went on to go build, I think, like a multiple 9-figure business. He ended up selling. Is what the speech was about. So just over time, you start leveling up more and more to suddenly like your first dollar seems huge, and then it's 10K, and then it's 20K, and then it's like 20K isn't a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Like really, like we got to get to 100K. It just like keeps going up and up and up, which is fascinating. I like what you had to say there. We were talking about, I want to move into the rapid fire questions after this, but just to stay on the M&A side of things a little bit, to switch the tables a bit, you're looking to invest into these companies, but you have stated before that even though you like investing in the companies, that you yourself are glad you don't have investors in your own. So why is that? Why did you decide to exclude investors from your own business? Is there a particular reason?
You know what? Like, there was never an intentional reason behind not having investors. I am grateful to be in a very cash flow heavy type of business model right now, whereby our margins are really, really high. Like, we're consistently above 70%. And I've been able to grow my business based on organic. And really, that's something which I never quite realized the power in until I started speaking to some of my friends that had like e-com companies whereby, their margins are below like 30% and such. And so I always thought, yeah, maybe I'll get investors as I'm building this SaaS and everything. Then I realized, you know what? Money's not the thing that I need. What I need is the advice and I need the guidance. And so I have great consultants that already work for me. So like I'll leverage them a little bit more. So that was one thing that I did, because some of these people have been in this game for longer than I've been alive, which is quite funny and also really cool. And I love them so much. But the other thing is I realized, well, actually I can build a board. Right? I can build a board and I can pay these people out based upon the company's performance and just pay them like a salary as well. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment, because I think there are many different ways to grow the business. And I think obviously if I was in SaaS, I can't advise on that because I don't know that world. I know how to sell high ticket B2B SaaS stuff. And so that's something that I can do really, really well. But when it comes to actually scaling a SaaS company with strategic moves like that or an e-com brand, I am not the person to ask. I haven't got experience there. But in coaching, you can self-fund the business and consulting as well, just by making a product and then putting that product in front of the ideal client and wrapping a guarantee around the outcome and selling it for a high ticket price. I think people overcomplicate these things honestly a lot. And so I see some people raising like just a couple $100,000 or something. If it's consulting as an example, you don't have to sell much of that to make 100K when you're good at what you do, right? And when you guarantee the outcome and you ensure that you definitely get the person there and deliver them at least 10 times the amount of value that they've paid you for. And I think this is when, for me, that was a move which was never even intentional, honestly, until earlier this year when I decided that I'm not going to move forward with the SaaS anymore. I thought maybe if I raise a load of money, then I could just deploy the money and hire great people. But then I thought, it's not even about the money, it's about the energy. And so where did I want to spend my energy? And people were like knocking down my doors to try and give me money, but I didn't want to just take money for money, because there's no such thing as like, even if they're giving you cash, there's obviously an exchange there, right? And so I just didn't want the pressure, right? And so that's not why I got into business. I don't want a lifestyle business per se. However, the way that I'm growing my companies is very much around my values. And one of my core values is freedom. And so I don't want anyone to feel like they can have the final say when it would be mine. And obviously I know you can put deals in place and legalities, etc., blah, blah, blah. I get that. But even for me, in the back of my mind, knowing that someone had invested in my company, there's always that pressure. So in the future, maybe would I want to build like some type of fund where people can invest in the companies that I'm buying and that I'm growing. Maybe, because I know that's something that by that time I'll probably have more desire to do. But right now, it's not something that particularly is interesting to me. And also, I just seen some companies, the way that they kind of spend the money is also why I'm very selective about the companies that I do invest in, because like I've just seen them wasting so much money and never caring about profits. And so I just think I'm much more in alignment with the type of business whereby you really, really focus on cash flow and make sure that the money is actually being used to make more money.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is a certain, I don't know, maybe like it's called like idea of raising money for your business, making the entrepreneur feel like, oh, I've made it. But it's ironic because it's almost like this really bad marketing that's done to entrepreneurs where a lot of them get into business for freedom and then they raise money, they think they made it, but guess what? Now you have a new master, the guy or woman you just took the money from, right? Because they're taking something, like you said, right? Now you got to perform to make it happen. And I've had friends who've raised money and I think they did it purely because of that, like the feeling of I made it. And then they find themselves often trapped in their own company, which is a terrible feeling. So I always tell people, approach investors, like I'm not against you getting invested in or anything. Like I think investors are great. I mean, obviously you're investing into people's businesses and I think that could be a great thing for those businesses. But I often compare it to business partnership. Ask yourself, what are they really bringing to the table that you don't have? And what does that really look like, right?
Yep, I'm so with you on that. I'm very passionate about this because I've seen so many people raise money and then they lose like a huge chunk of their business. And then they're total slaves to the investors, like having to entertain all these investors meetings, etc., doing these like old processes that this like huge family office is like forcing them to do when it's not, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think sometimes like, yes, for sure you have the cash, but then maybe you've lost your ability to be agile. So like, I'm not against, have raising money by any means. Like, as you said, I invest in companies. For myself, it's just not something I wanted and it's not something that I've needed to do. That's also one of the things that I like about this business model, right? Like it's very, very cash flow heavy and it allows you to make that good amount of money each month, which then you can deploy as you choose.
For sure. Well, we are at the end of the interview. We're hitting the most high pressure zone of this interview, the rapid fire questions. So, Lauren, are you ready?
I was born ready. I love the pressure.
Okay. I wasn't ready to say that question properly, so I'm glad you're ready.
I thrive in chaos as per.
Awesome. So I'm just going to ask three questions. Give us, the first thing that comes to your mind, 10, 20-second answers, totally fine. If you say something, I might make you expand on it. We'll see. But here we go. So in your view, what are the best hidden growth opportunities for a online or digital business?
I would say teaching what you know and then guaranteeing the outcome to the clients and then working with them till they get to that outcome and then building an entire program around that.
Awesome. I agree. What tools or resources can people use to help them systemize their business?
So we really love Notion. Notion has been great for us, big fans of it. Don't like overcomplicated stuff. I've had really expensive CRMs and everything in the past, which I was paying thousands and thousands for. But we really love Notion. It's simple, it's easy, and the team likes how aesthetic it is as well. Makes it more enjoyable to use, apparently. So that's good.
Two things on that. First off, missed opportunity for not saying Impact School as a resource. We'll get there. The second thing on Notion, real quick. So I'm a fan of Notion. I've used it. I've used a bunch of different project management tools. I actually just tried ClickUp recently. I wasn't as big of a fan as I thought I was going to be. But Notion, I really want to like. So my thing with Notion is I feel like it's a bit complicated to set up for what you need. So did you hire someone to like do that for you? Or did you just kind of like build it over time into your own system?
Yeah, so this is what we're really good at Impact School. So we actually built the whole thing and like we give it over to our clients and everything with like the whole dashboards and all of the automations and stuff. There's a lot you can do with it, honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy. I love it for that reason, but it's intimidating when you're looking at the blank canvas.
Yeah, that's fair. I think like you just need to know, right? A bad workman always blames his tools, right? And so you need to know what you want it for, and then you can optimize it for that one thing. But I think at the end of the day, like if you try and overcomplicate something, the question is like, why does this need to be so complicated? Like, how could we make this simpler? And then we strip it down to that. So I won't think like, I hate looking at stuff. I really hate these like complicated things. So I just tell them like, I need the most simple page possible with as little tabs as possible. That's what I want to see. And then they'll optimize for that.
Awesome. I'm a big fan of Notion, despite what I just said. I have a personal Notion myself that I use. But yeah, that's cool. I think the second person I've met that like actually uses it for their business instead of the personal stuff, because usually most people get to the blank canvas stage, like, oh, like hands up, I give up.
Yeah, I like it as well because I think things like, you can do all the stuff that you can do in like Trello and Asana and much, much more. It's like Google Docs that meets like a CRM, and like we have another CRM as well that we use, and like we kind of built this whole thing ourselves. That was one of the nice things about having a development team. So we got all that. But yeah, for us, like, I don't know, I like Notion and it just makes things simple and easy to navigate as well.
Yeah, Notion is super cool. So my final question for you, and this is the hardest question on here, is what has been your funniest moment working with the online business world?
Okay, so this one was, maybe I have recency bias, but I open my Slack, right? And I'm pretty much banned from using Slack. So if I get a Slack message, it's going to be something weird. And so Noor sent me a message there. And she's just like, OMG, I just received the weirdest email of my life. And so she sends a screenshot. And this guy has sent her an email regarding a job application. And it started with, "Hey, baby gal." And so, like, I'm just literally pissing myself. There's been so many more things. This one's just pretty recent, which is why it comes to my mind. But I'm like, dude, like, would you say that to, like, the
The
CEO
self-awareness.
of some, like, manufacturing company? Like, "Hey, baby boy." No, you wouldn't. You would not do that. And so it just kind of highlighted to me, like, wow, I guess sexism isn't dead. Well, there's not really sexism, but it's just like, I don't know, what's the word? I don't even know the word. It was just so weird and funny. So that.
Oh man, there's all these SEO link builders that I'll get emails from them every now and then, and they always started off with like, "My dear sir, I hope the glory of the day welcomes you." It's like, man, this is
Oh my
like
god.
this is you're really not speaking my language here.
Yeah. Well, there was another one actually. This is probably even funnier because this one was also years ago. So this was when I was still in the fitness industry, but someone had asked me to come and speak in their mastermind about how to get clients through selling through the DMs. So this is probably like 5 years ago now. And so I'm on this mastermind call with all these women in their like 40s and 50s. And I think they were all mums because it was like mothers type of mastermind thing. Anyway, so I'm like talking about whatever the hell I'm talking about. And suddenly in the corner, like I just see the girl. She's also, I wouldn't say a friend, but kind of like a business friend. She's like pissing herself. Like she's like laughing hardcore. And she sends me a private message on Zoom. Yes, Zoom. We were still using Zoom all the way back then. It was funny because suddenly in 2020, everyone started using Zoom. I've been using Zoom since I was like beginning days of this. But anyway, so she sends me this private message like, "OMG, ha ha ha, do you see that?" And so like I click through because I'm sharing my screen doing some slides, and like I click through the I click through the thing, like the videos of all the faces of the people, and I stop sharing my screen for a moment because I'm wondering like, is something going wrong? And I see this woman is just like fully stark naked. Like she's just getting changed. Her boobs are out. Her like, everything is out. Oh my gosh. I was laughing because I can't control my laughing. Like I just can't. And then I see my friend kind of laughing as well. And oh my gosh, that was one of the funniest things that happened. I had something similar as well on team meeting one time. This was when Noor first became like, she wasn't COO yet. Like she wasn't even a partner in Impact School. She was literally like operations assistant, and we were on the team call, and like this one guy that had been working for me really for years, I see his laptop just pointing down, and he's like fully not wearing any pants and like no boxes, nothing. It's like all hanging out, and Nora's like mortified. I'm just laughing so hard. And yeah, so these were like Zoom kind of like whoops type of moments, which, it just never gets old.
Oh, that's awesome. That reminds me a bit of the thing that happened, I guess, like a year and a half ago with the lawyer on Zoom who had the cat filter. He like showed up to court with it, didn't realize like what the problem is. Good stuff.
Oh my god, brilliant. I love
Those are awesome stories. So, Lauren, if someone wanted to get in touch with either you or Impact School, where are the best places for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so any social media, you can just type in Impact School if you're interested in that, IMPACT, and then space SCHOOL. Or then for me, myself, I'm on everything. Like the main platform I use right now as of 2022 is Instagram. Just Lauren Tickner, LAUREN TICKNER. Instagram, Twitter, anything as you like. Just not really TikTok. I'm not such a big fan. So shall we go?
It will consume us all in the end. I am not on it, but I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I know. I tried it for a while. It's okay. It's just like, it's
Yeah,
again that whole concept of Vial, right? Like, is it really vital right now?
right.
It's a luxury, so like we won't bother. We get our deals through mainly through Twitter and through Instagram, so we'll stay focused there.
Awesome. Well, we'll share the links to your socials as well as to Impact School in the show notes. And Lauren, thanks so much for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me. This was fun, and I look forward to learning more about everything you guys are up to, and exploring more different partnerships that we can have. So it's gonna be good.
For sure. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace. Or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.